Dear colleagues, I suggest that we start with our session 3, which is market integration of the sustainable energy source. Our keynote speakers for this session are Mr. Jaromir Kohlicek, keynote speaker Mr. Ivan Ivanov, and Ms. Meglena Rusinova. I give the floor to Mr. Kohlicek, please.
Děkuji. Viděl jsem, že všichni moji předchůdci mluvili svým jazykem. Jsem si takřka jist, že české tlumočení zde není. Which is the situation very typical for European structures, because despite of the fact there are 24 official languages, and those languages of all the countries are usually applied. Even translation from such huge languages like Danish. But we are newcomers, despite of the fact we are members for more than 15 years, nearly. 2004, it will be next year, 15 years. So we have to apply other languages. En lo que toca castellano, ¿se quiere usted? Podemos continuar en castellano.
If you like, we can continue in Spanish.
Or in German.
On peut continuer même en langue français.
If you like, we could even continue in French, because we are convinced that all languages of the European Union should be used to the extent possible.
Or you all that I shall continue in English, which is so simple that even Americans are fluent in English now and then. So, to the matter. In history, renewables have been used widely in all over the world. Number one, windmills. Maybe you remember those typical old pictures of Holland. These windmills were used to pumping water. And in our countries, like in Bulgaria, in Spain, in Czech Republic, we were using windmills to mill crops. Of course, this use, despite of the fact it's old-fashioned, used this energy of wind. Unfortunately, this energy is intermittent. So, sun was used as the second historic renewable. Extracting salt from the sea was always via energy of sun. And, of course, heating of water. If you will enter some southern countries, on each roofing in Nepal, for instance, is a huge black barrel. Heating of waters. Quite simple. And, of course, then the third possible source of energy, water. Water has been widely used in the whole history. Water mills, instead of milling crops by energy of wind, we were using water wheel, and, of course, in steel production, glass production, all these machines before introduction of electricity were operated by transmissions and water wheel. Of course, all new industries were related to water energy. Bigger towns were always posted in some river. There were many channels, water wheel, transmissions, and, for instance, textile industry in the middle of 19th century was completely built on water energy. There was no production of electricity in that time. And, of course, since very old time, mankind has been using oil and wood as renewable materials, the only source of energy. You are firing, and we were applying small oil lamps everywhere, not only in churches in last 2000 years. So, actual state of renewables. It requires huge investments because of we are used in last 50, 60 years to use on one side energy, on the other side different gases as the sources of energy, and we would like to suppress carbon dioxide. How to suppress it? The simplest way is to replace coal and to replace all petrol product. We are replacing now and then petrol products by petrol products. For instance, instead of diesel, we are applying biodiesel, or we are applying alcohol. Pure alcohol is used in Central Europe. We have many cars which are rebuilt to alcohol. It is clearly pure alcohol, but it's not a medical one. As for new possibility, in some 20 years, propane became such alternative fuel in my republic because of its byproduct. If you are processing crude oil or natural gas, we don't combust it, we are using it widely, but these byproducts are just 2-3% of the whole amount of oil, crude oil or natural gas you are processing. And a part of this, recently, some 10 years ago, methane and compressed methane started to be used. Actually, we are using windmills, which, if not well placed, are absolutely spoiling the landscape. It is something terrible if you will see huge columns of windmills everywhere instead of seeing brilliant landscapes all over Europe, especially in Germany. There are specialists in this case. Around Leipzig, it's terrible. Eastern England, seashore, it's absolutely spoiled by windmills. There's a good solution to hide them somehow or to install them a little bit further from the seashore. More than 14 kilometers is enough. It is the case in Northern Sea in Germany. Nevertheless, there is a big problem because of such a wind park is a huge capacity. We have to build some connection between the park and the land. German solution was to phase out their first nuclear reactor at the seashore. But they didn't continue. So till now, there is lacking high voltage grid, which will transmit this huge amount of energy from seashore to southern part of Germany or even to valleys of Austria, because of their pumping water, and the peak consumption is via these installations assured, not only in Austria. This is water. Of course, they are peak sources. This is the pumping of the water up the hill. In Czech Republic, we have 2 such installations. And there are some projects of tide electric power, especially at the shore of France. It could be applied because of the difference. High tide, low tide is 14 meters. So this is clear, but of course you have to change the landscape if you would like to use high and low tide. As for sun, actually water heating is quite clear, but recently vacuum collectors have been developed. I installed such a collector some 10 years ago in my houses, and 3 months during summer, it produces enough hot water for my family. Despite of the fact in Central Europe we have no such brilliant possibilities like in Bulgaria, in Spain, Greece, where sun is much more brilliant than in my country. So this is very simple at a bargain price, and it is useful. It doesn't hamper the grid of energy supply. Photovoltaic panels. In my country, recently, they were allowed even foreign investors and our domestic investors to install huge installations, several hectares even. These installations are spoiling arable land on one side. On the other side, whenever there is a change in the weather, there is a huge shock for local grid. And the third item, and we have to keep it in mind, it changes local conditions of the atmosphere, because of this huge black area means and that it functions like a chimney. That means hot air is going up. I would like, if you don't believe it, to ask you to apply ultralight plane and to pass over such an area. It's absolute shock because of that huge stream of hot air above this black area is quite apparent. And it should change local climate even. We have some indication that it changes local climate, and in some areas it hampers original quite good weather, and we have lack of water due to lack of rain in some areas around these installations. Well, as for biomass, biodiesel is actually discussed worldwide. Nevertheless, we have to use biodiesel rather carefully, because of biodiesel means that we are planting much more specific plants instead of diversity in the land. And if you are flying over Germany, over Czech Republic, you can see those yellow big areas, and it could spoil the quality of the land. That means the quality of arable land. Yeah? On the other side, the cost of transport, processing, etc. is rather high. If we shall evaluate all these things together, I'm not sure that it is worth. Bioethanol has been used since 30s to help a local agriculture sector, because of these subsidies were officially was told helping to pass over some crisis years. Well, in any case, this is to the contrary of using arable land for the sake of production of something to be eaten. In this world, there are so many problems with nourishment, and we are spoiling grains, we are spoiling sugar to produce alcohol. Then the third one is biomethane. Biomethane is something that could be in smaller units produced elsewhere. If it's properly done, it is splendid. I don't think biomethane should be applied to pipelines with methane. I find it as a nonsense, but it could be used for production of electric energy by cogeneration. This is the most effective way how to use biomethane. So this is the survey of different possibilities how to use bio products actually, and of course we have to take into consideration that EU legislative is this background requires from every country to assure its energy requirement. Number one, from this point of view, is the guideline that has that was imposed to all the countries, that we have to have stock of natural gas for 3 months. 3 months for in each European state. The same applies to crude oil. I'm sure not every country is following this directive, as well as, for instance, my esteemed Polish colleague know how do they apply after the crisis arisen decision that we have to interconnect gasoducts from north to south. Till now, even Stork has not been finished, which is very short gasoduct from Poland to Czech Republic. Actually, they are preparing another one from Poland to Slovakia. I think that we have to keep in mind by any application or directive what are the possibilities. Actually, it's quite modern to say electromobility. Do you know what is the voltage and amperage at small house? How to charge with 20 amps a car? It's a nonsense. It requires 32 amps for slower charging and 64 amps for rapid charging. Rapid charging could be then assured by these connections to bigger houses only, because of smaller house has 20 amps. I know it. It's like my houses, it's like my neighbors' houses. So there are huge investment required in order to install even a small charging unit. And some of my colleagues already stressed a big problem, the problem how to assure that everything will function if renewables are out of operation. Even in North Sea, just 80% of the time wind is blowing. And in Central Europe, during the day, I am producing in my small photovoltaic in summer 50 kilowatt hours per month. In winter, just 500 kilowatt hours per month in summer, and just 50 during winter time. So this lacking energy has to be supplied from the grid. And if every house will install such an installation, we have to have something to back this lack of energy. And I don't calculate with snowfall, I don't calculate with other patterns which are quite normal in Europe. So energy transport is a big problem, number one, not only in Germany, because of it is everywhere. Whenever you have some new sources of energy, you have to keep in mind how to back it and how to transport this energy further. Smart grids, etc., could be applied after this decision, after this construction. Energy transport should be avoided if we shall start to concentrate our efforts on hydrogen. Hydrogen, of course, is not so simple to store, but there are many works in different universities how to store it properly, for instance, in hydrates. And on the topics of hydrogen mobility, and there are many very promising steps in many countries of European Union, even in Czech Republic, and there are already motors using hydrogen cells. Electric motor, hydrogen cells. So this is emission-free moving bus, and I think this is very promising for the future because of excessive energy we can store like hydrogen, and then it could be used in industry. In Germany, they adopted very original solution. They are adding hydrogen till 7% to natural gas grid. My specialization are furnaces. I know how processes combustion of hydrogen. It's a very short, strong flame, and methane, which has long, soft flame. Yeah, in glass furnaces, we know this very well. So this is my small problem for industrial use of such a gas. Nevertheless, in the household, there is no problem, I think. Those burners are creating short flames, and whatever you are using, whether stove or some other using at home, there won't be any problem. So these are just several remarks to the future of renewables, and we have always to keep in mind how to transfer energy and how to back these renewable sources. Thank you very much.
Thank you. I now give the floor to Mr. Ivan Ivanov.
Благодаря ви, господин председател.
Thank you, Chair. My presentation will be on the market integration of renewable and the transition to renewable energy in the context of the Republic of Bulgaria. Just some background. When the European Union outlined that renewable energy would be developed and become part and parcel of the energy policy of the Union, it was obvious that some goals were defined, some values were set up, and preferential treatment was provided to this kind of energy. All that was contained in the strategy Europe 2020. One of the priority goals was to achieve an average share of 20% of the end consumption to be generated from renewables. Because of the fact that Bulgaria joined the European Union in 2007, namely a little later, set up its national goal at 16%. At the same time, in order to achieve these goals, a package of measures for renewables was set up. The preferential treatment included long-term contract and the mandatory purchasing of power, as well as feed-in tariffs, which were applicable to different types of primary sources. At the same time, in dispatching, there was priority dispatch for renewable energy. What did Bulgaria achieve within this period when renewable energy was fed into the system? Installed capacity in the country amounts to a little over 12,000 megawatt. Out of the 12,000 megawatt, about 40%, or approximately 5,000 megawatt, is installed capacity from renewable sources. So from wind over 700 megawatt, solar energy over 1,000, water energy over 3,000, and very little biomass, about 80 megawatt. One would immediately notice the big share, the large share of water generation, but that is due to the fact mainly that there are large hydro generators which were built and which were operational long before the renewable energy policies were adopted. So within the period under review, Bulgaria exceeded the targets. Instead of 16%, the country achieved 18.2% of the end consumption to be from renewables. So let me mention that out of the 28 EU member states, only 11 as of the end of last year, had met their goals. As a result of that, countries like Bulgaria can use the mechanism to statistically transfer the power generated from renewables, and this would allow the country not so much financial compensations, but rather investment in renewable energy. A good example in this context is the trilateral agreement between Lithuania and Estonia on the one hand, two countries which exceeded their goals within the package of Europe 2020, and Luxembourg, on the other hand, which could not achieve its goal. This statistical transfer could be subject to negotiations which Bulgaria and other member states could carry out with other states which had not been able to meet their goals. What's important here is that the revenues from such a transfer should be invested into the further development of renewable and its share within the energy mix of the respective member state. In the process of the market structure of the energy sector in Bulgaria, the different sources within the energy mix are confronted with several issues. When it comes to renewables, one of the big issues is the issue of long-term contracts on preferential buyback tariffs. This is something rather specific for this country, but at the same time, such contracts with preferential pricing exists for co-generators and the generators for renewables. With the necessity of integrated renewable energy within the liberalized energy market, literally a few weeks ago, Bulgaria adopted amendments in the Energy Act. As a result of these amendments, all energy sources, and that includes renewable sources, renewable power plants where the installed capacity is over 4 megawatts, should sell their generation on the liberalized energy market. And here on the slide you can see the energy which is being sold on the market and respectively the generation from the 4 main renewable sources, respectively sun, wind, water and biomass. The installed capacity of hydro generators is not very high, but the reason is that the facilities with a capacity of over 10 megawatt have been on the free market for years now. And that is why here we include capacity of hydro generators between 4 and 10 megawatt. In the process of market integration of renewable energy, it is important to stress that market conditions need to be complied with while still following the provisions of the existing buyback contracts. In Bulgaria, there is a forecast rate for the renewable power, and it is this forecast rate is calculated using a specialized methodology used by the Regulatory Commission. So the forecast rates for generators, be it water, solar, biomass, or wind, the existing preferential price is now replaced by the market price plus a certain bonus for a certain regulatory period. This forecast market price is defined as the sum total of the forecast market price of the base load of the country, and an adjustment index or coefficient for renewable. The forecast base load price for this country is set up based on the forward contracts for the respective regulatory period. The data is available in the Bulgarian stock exchange and also results from neighboring countries' stock exchanges, namely Romania and Hungary specifically. As for the adjustment coefficient or index, it is particularly important because it is based on reporting data from the previous year. It is the ratio between the rate of the respective group of generators if they were selling on the day-ahead market and the price on the current calendar year, again on the day-ahead market. So all that allows for all renewable generators with a capacity of over 4 megawatt to offer their generation on the exchange and get the exchange rate plus the bonus or premium, which I just explained. I explained the mechanism of calculating it. So, in the package, Pure Energy for All Europeans, a key element is, to a very large extent, the further development of renewable generation. It's no accident that one of the three key targets of this package is to become a global leader in renewable energy. In order to understand the development of renewable energy, here on this slide we illustrate the goals of Europe 2020, and on the second line we see the end consumption in 2020 of power from renewable sources, and Bulgaria's figure being 18.2, and at the end are the goals of Europe 2030. What I show for renewables on this slide needs to be clarified in the following manner. When in 2014, 2015, the goal was set up to 2030 in the first document. At that time, the share of renewables was 27% of the end consumption had to be renewable. Commissioner Canetti, in the last months, stressed on several occasions that investment plans in 2014, 2015, which allowed for the 27% to be from renewables, have to be adjusted. After all, the price of generation per unit keeps going down because of technological progress. And in this manner, it would be very easy, without too much effort, to achieve the share of 30% renewable energy. You all follow the debate between the European Commission and the European Parliament on this share. The European Parliament insists on 35%, and apparently this share would probably not be adopted. But the figure agreed upon at the end of the day would be no less than 30 and no more than 35%. The further development of renewables goes hand in hand with the development of new technologies. In general, the growth of renewable energy has many advantages, namely decentralization of generation, that is, lower transmission losses, flexibility of energy sources, own consumption by the users, which is impossible for other types of energy, and the gradual decrease of prices, a gradual price drop. At the same time, for the further development of renewable energy, it is key to consider the technology for storage, smart networks, smart measuring equipment, an increase of electric cars would result into a more smooth consumption curve, as well as other types of improvements. Very important for the clean energy package, and this is closely connected with renewables, is the involvement of consumers. Consumers have to be active participants in the renewable energy markets. In the implementation of the above-mentioned measures, it would be possible to generate one's own energy, and this could be true of every and any end consumer, including every household. So own energy, the own energy needs can be met by self-generated energy, and the end consumers would at the same time be generators of energy, and they can get together and set up energy cooperatives, and then they could use the services of energy aggregators. When we talk about clean energy, apart from renewables, it's important to consider nuclear energy as well. But we need to look at the facts and consider the significance of renewable energy in the last 20 years and compare it to nuclear generation. At the top graph, you can see the global investment in renewables in wind, hydro, and solar energy. And at the bottom, the red line illustrates investments in nuclear energy. You see that this type of investment is about 10 times lower, so there's a huge discrepancy here. So the additional capacity of renewable, and in the case of wind, here we have 139 new gigawatt, but according to Mr. Uruchev this morning, he said they were 154 gigawatt. So then we have 100 gigawatt from solar energy, and the capacity of nuclear generators has gone down by 17 gigawatt. Of course, this has a significant impact on the annual output of renewable and respectively nuclear energy. There is a rapid growth of renewable, solar, wind. There is a decrease in the nuclear generation. To a large extent, this trend is due to the significant shift and change in the technologies involved in solar generation and in renewable generation. On this slide, you can see the rapid decrease of solar or wind generation. This price here is quoted in US dollars. According to the latest data, for photovoltaic generation, 1 kilowatt hour costs only 5 US cents. And in wind generation, it is 4 US cents. And one can compare to the rates in photovoltaic. In Germany, there is a 40% decrease in the last year only. And while the price of photovoltaic generation is going down all the time, the nuclear generation is not getting any cheaper. On the contrary, the price is slightly going up. In the UK, at Hinkley Point is compared to the Paks power plant in Hungary on the slide. And something which is a rather topical issue in Bulgaria, the construction of a new power plant in Belene. The forecast price at the moment seems to be about 8 euro cent per kilowatt hour, so it's double. Facts here are crystal clear. They only reconfirm that the European Union has chosen the right way to go, namely to become global leaders in renewable generation. Thank you for your attention.
И аз ви благодаря, господин Иванов.
Thank you, Mr. Ivanov.
Благодаря, господин Добрев. Уважаеми дами.
Thank you, Mr. Dobrev. Ladies and gentlemen, members of Parliament, members of European Parliament, colleagues. In my speech, I will focus above all on the opportunities and challenges to the market integration of renewable energy set forth by the fourth energy package, Clean Energy for All Europeans, as a decisive instrument for regional cooperation of Southeastern European countries and for the opportunities that Bulgaria has to make use of in order to modernize its energy, to achieve energy independence and economic growth. This is the biggest and most progressive package from a global viewpoint regarding where we Europeans are going in the area of energy transformation and what we can expect. This package outlines a brand new electricity market design for better integrated renewable energy and a bigger share of the renewable energy, for an overall management of the energy union and how this management is implemented in compliance with energy and climate policies. The new framework outlined in the Directive for Energy from Renewable Sources and the documents proposing a new structure of the electricity market aim to put renewable energy at the center of the energy mix, as well as create level playing fields for all technologies. The reason is that electricity has a key role in the energy transformation to clean energy. The proposed new market design provides for integrating a big share of renewable energy. This will achieve greater flexibility as on the part of the suppliers as well as on the part of the consumers. What is important is the new provisions supporting broader regional cross-border electricity trade, more flexible markets, and serious responsibilities on the part of all participants in order to provide flexibility in the system. Regional cross-border trade and flexible power markets will be of benefit not only to the development of infrastructure of key capacities, but will also benefit the regional economies by allowing for an increasing share of cost-effective renewable capacities to be developed. We welcome the provisions of the new Directive for Renewable Energy, which encourage integrated short-term power markets to reward flexible market behavior at generation stage, at consumption stage, and at accumulation stage, creating opportunities to trade closer to the time of delivery. Maintaining priority dispatch of existing power plants and new non-discriminatory rules for access. There are clear texts regarding the limiting of generation from renewable energy power plants to be kept to the bare minimum. The directive sets forth the political predictability for investors and banning of retroactive regulatory and legislative changes that would threaten the viability of the power plants that have been set up. According to an Agora report, the new generation of renewable energy sources soared in 2017, and power generated from wind and solar energy and biomass has come ahead of power generated from coal for the very first time. The water potential of Europe has been used to a great extent, and the share of renewable energy sources from wind and solar energy and biomass production. They have increased by 12% in 2017, reaching 679 terawatt hours. This is a significant progress because only 5 years ago, energy generation from coal was twice the amount of energy generated from wind, solar, or biomass. Agora reports that the growth of renewable energy sources has become more uneven. Germany and the UK alone contribute up to 56% of the growth of renewable energy sources over the last 3 years. Due to the good conditions and huge investment in wind power plants, there has been a massive 19% increase of the power generation from wind energy in 2017, and this is good news. However, between 2014 and 2017, solar energy accounts for only about 14% of the growth of renewables, probably due to the passivity of southeastern Europe, which brings the biggest potential for energy generation from solar energy. EU energy consumption, EU power consumption has increased by 0.7% in 2017, meaning that this is the third year of increase in a row. Europe's economy is on the rise and energy demand is increasing as well. Economies of scale increase and more competitive supply chains and further technological advancement continue to decrease the costs for power from solar and wind energy. The same factors increase the availability of these key sources of renewable energy at night and at different climatic conditions. According to a report analyzing the costs issued by the International Renewable Energy Agency, if there are appropriate policies in place by 2025, the price of solar power could decrease by 59% and wind power with at least 26%. Increased competitive pressure from energy markets worldwide leads to technological innovations. At a continuous decrease of equipment costs, reduction of capital and maintenance costs, it becomes more and more important for decreasing the overall costs. The last IRENA report on power generation potential from solar and wind energy outlines the huge unused potential of southeastern Europe. The estimates of the technical potential of renewable energy in southeastern Europe amounts to 740 gigawatts, Estimates being that about 130 gigawatts of this potential can be integrated in a cost-effective manner. Currently, the installed capacities of renewable energy reach about 36 gigawatts, with wind and solar potential remaining very big indeed and insufficiently used. With the encouragement and opportunities provided by the fourth energy package, we at Southeastern Europe must make use of our potential. We are looking forward to the upcoming trilateral meeting on the 17th of May, and we encourage the Bulgarian presidency to adopt an ambitious goal and plan to promote renewable energy to be adopted by the end of our presidency. As Associate Professor Ivanov said, the renewable energy industry in Bulgaria today is faced with the topic of the transition from long-term agreements on feed-in tariffs to contracts on premium and liberalized market. This is the topic of the day. In order to keep the viability of the renewable energy power plants that have already been installed and protect our legitimate interests as investors, in intensive and I should say a fruitful dialogue with the Commission on Energy and the Bulgarian Parliament, the Ministry of Energy and the Energy Regulator, together we are building the mechanisms for the model of market transition and integration of renewable energy. Of course, all of these changes must be made looking at the future, considering the future adoption of the documents of the fourth energy package. The successful liberalization and market integration of the productions of the producers of renewable energy in Bulgaria will provide for an easier adaptation of the Bulgarian energy sector to the regulations of the fourth energy package. Our chance is now, by using the models for market integration that have already been created, to fully develop the opportunities and potential of the Bulgarian sector to make it attractive to investors and the goals that we will discuss by 2030. Not only to achieve them, but also by achieving them to make this sector of the Bulgarian economy highly competitive and a leading one in the next few years. The mechanisms for limiting and promotions set forth in the package for clean energy for all Europeans are oriented towards liberalized energy markets of the European states. If liberalization lags behind in Bulgaria, this would adversely impact the opportunities for our country to make use of the strengthened mechanisms for supporting the new package. We need to set forth more ambitious national targets. We need to keep our leadership in renewable energy in Southeastern Europe. The targets that the state sets forth must be declared by the Integrated Plan for Climate and Energy. It is important to find the economic benefits for our country through implementing schemes for statistical transfers of green energy and cross-border cooperation regulated in the new directive on renewable energy. Financial framework and tools must be part of the process for transition from an era of highly subsidized renewable energy sources to non-subsidized renewable energy sources, but to this end, we need good regulatory framework and political predictability, and this should be sufficient for investor interest. I will quote Mr. Claude Turmes, who less than a month ago said at a conference in Sofia, "What I want is the pilot phase in the next project for Southeastern Europe, which is a guarantee fund for investment in the area of renewable energy sources. I want it to be in Bulgaria, and maybe we could deliver it together with a combination of cooperation between Bulgaria, Romania and Greece, because we can scale it even further this way." This means that if we work together in the region, somewhere in 2020, we wouldn't be dreaming of lower capital costs. We will be able to organize all of this together for the next year. And all of these negotiations can be held together during the negotiations on the clean energy package. Allow me to conclude with one of the highlights of the new directive on renewable energy. I have the chance to speak to you today, the representatives of the energy committees of the EU Parliament. The new provisions of the directive enable anyone to generate solar energy for own consumption, to generate it and to store this energy. The new directive on renewables provides a broad definition of the concept of own consumption and new opportunities. This is very important indeed. In the end of the day, this is what will help us create a new model which will in essence allow us to support small-scale installations. And this is the direction which I think we should all follow. We want people to own and produce their own power. We want people to be part of the energy transition. This is really significant. Own consumption is not only for people around us, it's important for small business as well. It is important for retail outlets, it's important for industrial enterprises. Many of our members actually use solar energy today for their own consumption on small scales to the amount of a few megawatts. From everything that we have observed, we can say that it is important to maintain the broad definition of own consumption in all European countries, because this is the real new right of all European citizens to generate, to use, to accumulate, and to sell an energy in order to allow the collective consumption of power produced for own consumption. I think that in the direction where we are heading with the active consumers, we should be as open-minded as we can, and this will enable us to reach new business models related to cost decrease in the course of energy transition. This makes me think that all European citizens will be able to generate and consume solar power. Thank you. Thank you. Madam Rusenova?
The debate. First in my list is Mr. Adam Kaweda, Poland.
Szanowni
Ladies and gentlemen, market integration of sustainable energy sources is no doubt associated with some systemic costs. I mean, there are additional costs associated with the storage of those energy sources, and that can be true of gas-fired electric power plants. And there are really three main constituents. There are others, but I'll concentrate on the main ones. Additional costs for balancing the grid can mean that you have to have additional sources that can be controlled, that can be managed closely. And to balance the system in situations where there are errors in forecasting the amount of energy that will be generated by solar or wind. There is the additional distribution cost, because wind and solar generation often takes place far from the point of consumption, which can mean additional distribution costs. And then there are what I would call the profiling costs. That is to say, a reduction in the number of hours of operation of other power plants that most efficiently are run on a permanent basis. So there's an additional cost of shutting them down or starting them up. Then there are the additional costs for backup or reserve amounts. And we cannot forget that when you have a larger contribution of electricity from sources that are difficult to control, that can result in additional generation costs and additional transmission costs. I was pleased to hear what Mr. Jaromir Kohlicek has said, the vice chair of the ITRE committee, because he's drawn attention to some points that are very much relevant and that can result in some perturbation of the system. Under present circumstances, it's difficult to imagine that we could, in households, provide the units of energy that are required for effective and efficient utilization of individual electric vehicles. So we think that we can concentrate on public transportation. I live not far from the Czech border, and I notice that our neighbors in Ostrava in particular are using more and more electric public transport with charging stations. But that also has to be associated with storage of electricity. If not, we'll be losing a lot of energy. We'll be reducing energy efficiency in transmission. The charging stations would have to be powered by large units. I mean, we can't assume that only one vehicle will be charged. I mean, there may be moments when you're charging several vehicles, at other times none. And if you use renewable sources of energy like wind and solar, and if you want to introduce them into the system of electric mobility, then we will achieve some very good effects, and that is really our ambition and our aspiration. We believe that with these cutting-edge technologies, we will be able to achieve the objectives. But there are still some open questions. How will we fill up the slack when there is no sun or no wind? And that can occur, and this has been mentioned by Mr. Kohlicek. Now, of course, that means that we have a number of tasks to accomplish, technological tasks that have to be resolved, for which we have to find solutions. Very often, as I've said earlier, wind farms are quite far from the points of electricity consumption. And there's one other point that I'd like to stress very strongly. When we discuss all of these issues associated with market integration of sustainable energy sources, we also have to keep in mind projects that are planned or that are foreseen and that are strategic, and very often they can be advantageous from the point of view of individual national economies, but at the same time, we believe that they cannot take precedence over political priorities associated with energy security. They must not undermine the values that have brought us together, that bring us closer to one another as a European Union. Now, Poland is seeking to implement a system that would universalize energy solidarity among all member states of the European Union. And therefore, Poland cannot accept pseudo-safe solutions, absolute pooling of, for instance, gas pipelines joining EU member states, and giving priority to private investment. I mean, it is as if we were to say that the use of public roads in the European Union can be used differently by different users, but that would result in a danger for all. The road will become unsafe. So I think that we need to ask ourselves a hard question. Are we empowered to undermine the values that unite us in the name of certain private market principles? Thank you.
Thank you. Now I give the floor to Mr. Fernando Carlos Rodriguez Perez from Spain.
Sí, gracias.
Thank you, Chair. Just briefly, I just wanted to highlight how the market in renewables is changing. There's an interesting experience which we had in Spain halfway through the last decade, so from 2005 onwards. Renewable energy had a considerable impact, and there was an increase in production on the basis of subsidies, large subsidies, because before that there'd been considerable deficits, hundreds of thousands of deficits in national and regional budgets. But now, in recent years, in the past 2 years, we've had a great deal of subsidies provided on to photovoltaic farms and wind farms, producing 500,000 megawatts. And the cost now is zero for the participating companies on the basis of the help which has been given, the assistance which has been given. So this market today is surging because of the support which is received from the European Union to these technologies. Obviously, there are costs of installation, and this is something which has to be provided, has to be subsidized, and this has been our experience. And I just wanted to make this clear to other countries as well, because the representative of the Spanish Parliament is highlighting the work which is being done in Spain, particularly for wind farms in the sea. A great deal of work is also being done in the UK and Germany along these lines. Thank you.
Thank you. Just on time. Mr. Rautan Yodas now, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Is 2 minutes or 3 minutes? Okay, fine, thanks. Ladies and gentlemen, there has been significant developments in renewables across the world. Global renewable capacity has substantially increased in recent years, and Turkey has substantial potential of renewable energy resources. There has been important investment in the renewable energy sector to increase its share in our energy mix. The share of renewables in installed power in 2017 is 45%. And Turkey has ranked third for solar investment in Europe in 2016 by having increased PV installations nearly threefold. And the groundbreaking ceremony of Turkey's first integrated solar module, cell and panel production factory was held on December 21st, 2017. Additionally, we want to increase the share of domestic and renewable energy power generation to 2/3 by 2023. And energy should be considered not as a cause of problems, but as instrument of enhancing welfare and peace. And we proved this through our investment that we made in the past and that are still making, such as Baku-Tbilisi-Ceyhan pipeline project, Turkey-Greece interconnector, and Baku-Tbilisi-Erzurum pipeline projects. These projects have made positive contributions to all parties involved. And Turkey will continue to be a safe harbor, an important regional actor for investors in its region. In this context, in the presence of your esteemed representatives, I would like to emphasize once again that we are ready for and that we support collaborations based on common benefits and win-win approach. And we believe that the most convenient route to transport the resources of Eastern Mediterranean to the European Union countries is Turkey. As EU is making prioritization among various alternatives, it should approach by doing things competitively and effectively. And during the determination process of the PCI list by the EU, we will be very glad if the EU considers our proposals, and we believe that Turkey's proposal will benefit all the relevant parties and will enhance the secure energy supply to Europe. Mr. Chair, I thank you for the kind hospitality and very fruitful meeting having experience here in Sofia, and I thank you all.
Thank you. Mr. Kochlicek, please, you have the floor.
Thank you. I would like to pose my co-panelists one simple question. How do you evaluate future of Carnot cycle by renewables? Thank you.
Anyone? Okay. Okay. Could you repeat the question, please?
Maybe I can explain the question. Carnot cycle is the cycle in which you are from high-grade steam producing electric energy. That means my question was whether renewables could be applied for the production of high-grade steam in order to produce in traditional manner, like in coal plant, like in gas plant, like in nuclear power plant energy. I know it is possible. In Spain, in Huelva, I've seen such an installation, but how my esteemed colleagues evaluate this potential? Because of in southern countries, with plenty of sun, you can use this Carnot cycle, not only in Spain, but also in Italy, Greece, Bulgaria, elsewhere in Balkany. In Central Europe, it's a nonsense. You have to concentrate by means of mirrors, energy of sun to a boiler, and then you will gain on one side certain flexibility, on the other side you are traditionally producing energy, electric energy. Yeah, so how do you evaluate this Carnot cycle? This is the simple technical question, because for the future it's very important, because of solar panels, if they are illuminated, they immediately produce energy. If they are in the shade, you lose all this energy. Of course, another question is effectivity of this transformation. Actually, it is 11%. So we have to invent new chromophores. In Czech Republic, we are working in the field. We have captured some chromophore with double possibility to capture photons. That means 22%, but it is still under evaluation and it is still under technical development. And of course, it is immediate reaction of photovoltaic, but in the case of Carnot cycle, there is some flexibility. And of course, there was a question of stockage. In the case of a big photovoltaic in Vrchlabí, it is very close to Polish frontier, and there are already installed several months ago huge GEL batteries. This is one possibility. Another possibility, I've heard that some big distributors would like to make a contract with smaller producers in order to use capacity of their batteries. For instance, I have one installation with batteries in order to stock this electric energy if I'm not using it. For instance, for the sake of utilization during the night, during some period which is nebulous, etc. And the third one, which is very promising for the future, for stocking huge quantities of energy, is hydrogen. You can produce from this excessive energy hydrogen. And of course, there are many problems up to now with the stockage of hydrogen, with transportation, etc. But there is huge development recently done in this field, and a huge development is also done on the topics of fuel cells using hydrogen for production of energy, for instance, in the bus or in a car. So for the future, it will be the solution of this lacking grid of high enough capacity in order to charge all these electromobiles, etc. Yeah? So I am, as a technician, always in the search of some solution, right, not just imposing questions. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much for the clarification. Indeed, mixing technology would allow us to save that energy, and for a moment when we don't have it from renewables. I'm very happy that I did not have to conclude that we leave that question to Bulgaria's next presidency in whatever, 15, 20 years. So it's a good thing that we cleared that. Thank you very much. Does anyone want to make further comments? If not, I suggest that we go to our last session, which is ambassadors' remarks, and any of our other guests, of course. The first intervention is from Ms. Gurbanova. Please, you have the floor.
Good afternoon. The Honorable Delan Dobrov, Chair of the Energy Committee of the National Assembly of Bulgaria, distinguished delegates, dear participants, I am very much honored to participate here at today's meeting on behalf of Azerbaijan, and my name is Nargiz Gurbanova. I'm Ambassador of Azerbaijan to Bulgaria. And I'd like to express my appreciation to the Bulgarian side for hosting this event. As highlighted by Ms. Magni and previous speakers, the reliable and affordable supply of energy is essential for economic growth, and many governments are striving to achieve these progressive energy policy goals, and it's obvious that national parliaments contribute to these important processes. For a long time, the EU has been at the forefront of international efforts to ensure energy security through diversifying routes and sources of energy supply. Its cooperation with partners, including Azerbaijan, has been a significant part of this long-term strategy. As an important element of Azerbaijan-EU partnership, energy sector cooperation has produced mutually beneficial results. And ever since, my country has been a reliable partner in creating a diversified oil and gas pipeline infrastructure that promoted enhancing energy security in a wider region. Our close cooperation with the EU has been crucial in the successful realization of our common goals in the field of energy. And elevation of Azerbaijan-EU partnership in the field of energy to the level of strategic partnership as far back as in 2006 laid the foundation for implementation of even larger projects such as the Southern Gas Corridor, and there's been a reference, quite many references to the SGC in previous sessions. And since then, Azerbaijan and the EU, in cooperation with other partners, have made substantial progress in implementation of all the 4 components of this mega project of strategic importance to the European Union. And natural gas from Azerbaijan to be transported through the SGC will contribute to EU's diversification efforts by bringing additional volumes from different sources via alternative routes. With the potential to increase transportation capacity, the SGC will assist in the creation of an integrated, well-functioning European gas market and contribute to cross-regional trade. Its integral part, the Trans-Adriatic pipeline, will help provide a better energy supply mix for consumers in the Balkans and Southeastern Europe, as well as achieve significant CO2 reductions through substitution of obsolete coal-fired power plants. It is gratifying to witness that due to joint, coordinated efforts of all of our partners, 3 out of 4 components of the SGC will be commissioned quite soon, and SGC now is becoming a reality. We also appreciate the efforts of our partners in the realization of the Trans-Adriatic pipeline, and we are sure that its construction within the agreed timetable will finalize the creation of a bridge between the EU and the Caspian region. Bulgaria is an important partner in SGC implementation, and we commend the efforts of the Bulgarian government in building interconnectors with neighboring countries, and are looking forward to the groundbreaking ceremony of the interconnector Greece-Bulgaria in June. You may know that currently the Shah Deniz gas field in Azerbaijan is the only resource base for the Southern Gas Corridor. However, Azerbaijan possesses significant gas volumes, and our confirmed gas reserves exceed the Shah Deniz field more than twice and amount to 2.6 trillion cubic meters. We therefore see a large potential for expanding our energy cooperation with Europe. We highly appreciate this mutually beneficial partnership and are ready to work further for ensuring secure and affordable supplies of energy from the Caspian Basin to Europe. Thank you.
Thank you. Does anyone else want to participate in debate? No? We go to closing remarks. Thank you everyone from my name and the Bulgarian presidency for the constructive meeting today. As far as I could see earlier, weather outside was beautiful. I hope that you have time for a short walk around the city before your flights back, and please all have safe flights back. Thank you.